So, what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about a concept of adaptively loading images using what is called a Network Information API. So, quick show of hands, who has heard about the Network Information API, which is one of the web APIs? One. Wow. Two. Yay. Okay. So, we'll learn about that. So, why is it important and what we're going to talk about? So, today we live in the age of visual media, right? So you go to a website, it's full of images, it's full of videos, it's full of visual content, right? So I was on the tube today, I saw people on their mobile browsing sites, e-commerce sites, news websites, etc., and there are images and videos everywhere. Now, of course, when you have a visually appealing site, it helps you with, click-through rates. It helps an e-commerce website to sell products, especially if you can see a video of the product, a 360-degree image of a product, right? So visual media is everywhere. But of course, you can't neglect performance in here, right? Because imagine an e-commerce website that is trying to sell you shoes, okay? So you load a page and there are 100 shoes on that page. Each shoe has, say, 2 or 3 images that they want to load and show it to you, right? That has a huge impact on the performance of that site if those images are delivered in the wrong way. And I'm going to link to a study later on, and you can read the entire white paper. But basically, about 75% of the website's weight is images and videos. Okay, so there's a lot of media content out there. So here's a quote for you. "Oh, I will just wait for this e-commerce website to load. I have time," said no one ever, right? People are very hasty when it comes to buying things. They're not going to wait for a site to load. They just want to see stuff, click buy, and go to the next site, okay? So you have to be very careful on how you do this. But then you run into this situation, right, where you kind of run in this very weird loop. So more images you have on your website means that your website is more visual. You can potentially sell more stuff. But then on the other hand, the more images you have, the more you're going to impact the performance of the website. And the more you impact the performance of the website, the more it's going to affect your sales. So how do you balance that out? That's a very difficult and an interesting question at the same time. So what you could do is optimize your images, but optimizing images is very, very difficult. So back to that example of an e-commerce website where you have 100 shoes listed. You have to think about what happens if people view your website on an iPhone or a tablet or on a PC. You have to have different formats. You have to have different aspect ratios. So you can't just take one picture of a shoe and then Photoshop it 100 times, right? That's not going to be very scalable. Generally speaking, people use JPEG images or the JPEG format for displaying photographs on their websites, PNGs for graphics and illustration, GIFs for cats and other funny animations. But there are other data types as well, or other formats as well, I'm sorry. So there are, WebP, there's JPEG 2000. Also, is it better to show an actual GIF or show an actual MOV file? So how do you deal with all these challenges? So obviously the marketing slide has to come now. So I work for Cloudinary, as I mentioned. So we do digital asset management. Very simply put, what that means is that we allow you to store your images and videos in the cloud under your own account, and then you can deliver those images in an optimized format. And I'm going to show you what I mean by that. So basically we can auto-optimize your images. So if a certain image is viewed from an iOS device, we're going to deliver the right format in the right size for that device without you having to change anything, without you having to change the actual image. And I'm going to talk to you these last 2 flags that you see here, Q auto and F auto. So those are short for auto quality and auto format. And I'm going to show a demo in just a second. But what else are we going to talk about? So we're also going to talk about the service worker, at least in a nutshell. Anyone heard about the service worker? I assume so. So basically, for those of you who are not aware of the service worker, I find this way of thinking about it to be the easiest. Just think about it as a proxy, right? So you make a request to somewhere, the service worker is between the response, and it can somehow alter the response or the request. It can add things to it, it can remove things to it, and we're going to be leveraging this in the demo as well. And essentially, the service worker is programmable using JavaScript. So you can write JavaScript code to code a service worker. And then we have the Network Information API. So as I mentioned, the Network Information API is in an experimental phase at the moment. It's only supported by Chrome and I think the Samsung internet browser on certain Android devices. And I do hope that more browsers are going to be supporting it. So it's one of the web APIs, and it essentially gives you connection information about, it gives you information about your connection. It can tell you what the connection speed is, what type of connection is, whether it's 2G, whether it's 3G, etc. And we will see how we can utilize that to serve the right quality image. Okay, who's ready for the demo? No one. Good morning. Okay, so just to show you wrong browser. Real quick, what Cloudinary can do. Okay, so I uploaded this image and it is part of my Cloudinary account. Okay, so and probably that's not really visible. I will try to zoom in. Oh, that works. Nice. Okay, so that's the URL of my image. Okay, so it's something, my account name /image /upload /lady.jpg. Okay, so it's a JPEG image. And what I can do, I can manipulate this image just by manipulating the URL. So I can do things like, I only want a 250 or make it a 400 width image generated. Okay, so I just change the URL and now I see an image that has a width of 400. Okay, so let's say that most of the time when people upload such images, they want to generate a sort of a profile image. Usually it's rounded and it's focused on the face. Okay, so how would you do that? Well, you would probably do some CSS manipulation of the image. The problem with that is that the actual image that you have is still going to be, a couple of megabytes maybe, or many hundred kilobytes, right? But what we can do, we can add further parameters here, and we can do crop. So crop a thumbnail and put a gravity on the face. So what this is doing now, it's editing the image and it's serving you the image of the face, and it creates a sort of thumbnail from that. And we can also do things like, let's say, radius max. Okay, so maximum radius. Now obviously you see the problem here that now we're kind of getting that thumbnail feel, but because it's a JPEG, it has this white background. So we can of course easily change that to PNG, and now we have this transparent image. Okay, and just by modifying the URL, we have achieved a different image without using CSS, without using Photoshop, etc. Okay, so just remember, as a takeaway from this demo, is that we can manipulate the URL of this image. So then, let's change to another image. Okay, so here's the Hungarian water polo team celebrating something. I'm not sure how visible that is, but this image is about 992 by 600 in size. And what's also important, can you guys actually read this, especially behind in the back? Okay, so this is a JPEG image, as you can see, and it's about 108 kilobytes, which is not super large, but still we could do better. So what we could do is, first of all, I'm using Chrome. So, and I can't remember since when, but for a couple of years now, the preferred format for images for Chrome browsers is WebP, exactly, but we are serving a JPEG. So what we could do, well, we could manipulate this URL and say, you know what, give me fauto. So now we are actually returning a WebP image, even though the extension is JPEG. Okay, so Cloudinary is returning a WebP image because it knows that we are using a browser. Also notice that we have pretty much halved the size of the image just by delivering the right format for the browser. Okay, and we can do additional things because I mentioned this QAuto. So what's important is that, especially for photographs such as this one, you would be very surprised how much of the quality you can lose without actually seeing the change. Okay, so now I added QAuto, which is what you see up there is a reduced quality version of the image, but to the human eye, that's not visible at all, right? You can't tell the difference whether the previous image was in a higher quality or not. But if we check, we have now further reduced the size of the image, okay? So before it was 61 kilobytes, now it's just 57. And I could pass in a few options here. So I could say QAuto, or actually I could say Q10. So this is going to bring back a quality 10. And now, so it's reducing the quality by 90%, I should say it that way. And you can see that the size of the image is 19 kilobytes. But still, I can't tell the difference, right? The image still looks okay, right? So what we're going to do is, in the last demo, we're going to be using the Network Information API plus the service worker to see how we can make sure that a lower quality version image, which is smaller in size as well, gets loaded when the network is slow. So what we have is just a very simple index page for now that will work with this image that you saw now, right? So I'm just adding that in an image source. So let's do an HTTP serve from here. Copy that, go to Chrome. Okay, so we have this image here. Oops. As part of our website. Okay, so what we want to make sure is that if someone is, let's say, on a slow 3G, so that's like a 2G connection, that we want to save some bandwidth and we want to make sure that the whole site loads faster so that the where did it go? Let's go back here. So that this image is not going to be, what was it, 108 kilobytes in size, but it's going to be a lot lower so that the entire site loads faster. So what we can do, first of all, I'm going to add this service worker in here. So that's just one way of adding a service worker. So we want to make sure that the browser supports the service worker. That's what you see in line 10. That's your if statement. And then we're going to load our service worker, which is sw.js. And then if the registration of the service worker was successful, we display a console log message. Otherwise, we display the error. So what does the service worker do? So remember that I said that this is a proxy. So what we do, we add an event listener. So this is the entire service worker code that you see here. So we add an event listener for fetch events. So when the web application or the website is going out to fetch a resource, to get a resource. And what we do, we test for the most common image extensions, right? JPEG, PNG, GIF, or WebP. So if any of these are true, we go out and get the connection information, and that's navigator.connection, and then the effective type is going to be the type of the connection, 4G, 3G, 2G, etc. And then there's this switch statement here where we test for the connection. So if someone is using the 4G connection, we add, or we want to use this QAuto good. So this is not using a percentage, but it's still going to reduce the image based on an algorithm that Cloudinary deemed to be like a sort of good image quality. If it's 3G, it's going to be reducing the quality even further into what we call echo, so that's economic. And then if someone's on a 2G or slow 2G connection, we're going to do QAuto low, which is about, I think, 80% reduction in the quality. And then we also do a default QAuto best. So if none of these conditions are true, just try to deliver a reasonable quality version of that image. And notice that I'm using this image quality variable. So basically, this is going to be filled with one of these details. And what you can do with the service worker what we do here is that we rebuild the URL. So I split it, and basically I add the image quality, and just for fun, the format to be f-auto as well, so that if someone forgot to add the f-auto option in here, I add that using the service worker. And what is beautiful about the service worker is these last 3 lines. So once it has done all these manipulations, it's going to respond with a fetch event where it's sending the updated URL. Okay, so we basically captured the request going out to Cloudinary, and we have added bits and pieces to it, and then we're sending that to the server so that we get the appropriate image. At least that's the plan. So let's go ahead and save this. Go back to here, refresh. Okay, so we have the service worker registered, and now if we go to network, okay, that's there. So when I refresh this site, you can see that this JPEG file is actually coming back from the service worker. And if you check, I don't know how much you can read that, but it's already added the f-auto and the q-auto good parameters to the URL. And we can check that the size, well, you saw the size there, sorry, it was here. So this is 56 kilobytes roughly. So let's go and see fast 3G. So someone is on a fast 3G or on a 4G connection. Now we bring back an image which is 43 kilobytes. And if I hover over my mouse here, then we get Q-auto echo and then F-auto added to the URL. And if we go slow 3G, that's I think what the 2G connection is, then we will get an even smaller image. 38. Okay? So you can see how this is loading the most appropriate image based on the connection speed. That's just the code that I explained. Okay, so these are some resources that I mentioned. So the slides are going to be distributed to you, so you can click on these links. The first one is just a white paper about why you want to optimize your website. So what it means for click-through rates and sales and all that. Then I also linked to the network information API, so you can see what other properties you can access. Link to Cloudinary, of course. If you are new to service workers and progressive web applications, which seems to be a buzzword these days, then you can go out to that URL and get a free ebook. And basically everything that I talked about now, I also blogged about. So that's the link in the bottom, adaptive image loading based on network speed, explaining this whole thing a bit more in detail. Now you can clap. Thank you.